Brigadier General. It's a great pleasure to have you here. Welcome in from the cold, so to speak. Could I ask you perhaps to begin with just to summarise the situation that Canada finds itself in terms of its geographical situation and what pressures that provides on the modern aviator?
Yeah, Canada is a pretty unique landmass. I mean, if you were to take a look at a sort of a satellite image of our country, a massive area of responsibility domestically, about 10 million square kilometers of territory, 3 coastlines, Pacific, Arctic, and Atlantic. And as I think a lot of people can appreciate, for a reasonably large portion of the year, some fairly unforgiving temperatures, particularly this past winter. And I would suggest that if you take a look at both the size of our domestic area of responsibility, as well as the kind of weather challenges and terrain challenges that we have, it plays a large role in shaping the requirements that I and my team would build into the acquisition of a new aircraft procurement, for example, or the provision of a new service. And ultimately, if it shapes what our aircraft are going to be like, ultimately that very same thing will shape will also shape the kind of training that we do, as well as the kind of simulation that we do as well. And if you look long term, out say out 10, 15 years, as we begin to modernize our simulation capability, our live virtual constructive simulation environment that we're working toward will definitely take many of these sort of common synthetic environments into consideration.
And for the foreseeable years, what is the strategy essentially for pilot training and simulation?
So, currently, for pilot training, we have really 2 main contracted services, sort of a public-private partnership that exist. One is the NATO Flying Training Center, centered in Moose Jaw in Cold Lake, Alberta, and the second is contracted flight training services out of Portage La Prairie. And they provide us a sort of an ab initio to undergraduate pilot training sort of level up to wing standard. And then for fighters, there's one more sort of fighter lead and trainer element to that. And then ultimately, all of those pilots would go off to our operational training units to learn how to fly very specific air platforms. That construct has been in place for some time now. Both those contracts come to a conclusion in the near future. NATO Flying Training begins to come to an end starting in 2019 for the 3 elements of the training, and ends in about 2021. And for the contracted flight training services, their contracts come to an end in about 2027. So in the longer term, we are looking at a future pilot training service of some nature, holistically starting in about the 2025 timeframe, that would train at the basic pilot level and then stream into 3 advanced levels: 1 for fighters, 1 for multi-engine, 1 for rotary wing, and provide those level of services. This construct's still a little off on the horizon. We, as the Department of Defense, are looking at options to examine each one of these, and as the project moves forward, at some point there will be a formalized decision as to exactly how pilot training will be done starting 2025 and onwards. From a simulation perspective, we've developed a strategy for the Royal Canadian Air Force called Simulation 2025, RCAF Simulation Strategy 2025, and it envisions a transition from what is essentially a number of sort of semi-isolated, high-fidelity, full-motion simulators and satellite part task trainers, things of that nature, that we currently have today, and involves a transition through to about the 2025 timeframe, where we would link them across the distributed mission training network that allows for joint distributed mission training with our Army and our Navy confreres, and potentially with like-minded allies and coalition partners, again, well off into the future. But the idea here is that it's aimed at a live, virtual and constructive environment, tying together all of these simulators and satellite systems through a distributed mission operating center, and then connecting them with live assets so that you can actually really save on flying hours. You can practice things that would be cost prohibitive in real life, and quite frankly, in many instances, extremely dangerous to actually execute.
So for all of these efforts and your very busy schedule, you've also honoured us with your presence here at the Military Flight Training Conference. Just on a final note, could you describe to me the value that adds to those efforts?
Yeah, I would. What I find very very positive is that I get together with many other countries, the United States, the UK, and many others, and we find that we share very common challenges when it comes to aircrew training, and very similar challenges when it comes to looking at training in a virtual environment and how to safely migrate very complex and often very dangerous training into a virtual environment in a way that pays dividends both financially but also operationally and from a flight safety perspective as well. We're all kind of struggling through many of the same challenges. Canada being a modest or small air force, we will see these things on a smaller scale than, say, perhaps the United States or even the United Kingdom. But the same basic challenges are there, and so a conference like this allows us to sort of communicate those challenges, articulate the strategies that we're using to move forward. In many instances, I'll pick up a number of very key important points, success areas that other countries have seen, and those are the sort of things that we can migrate into our own projects as we move forward.
Well, as we can hear, the next session is about to begin, so I'll let you get back to the conversation. Thank you very much, Joe.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.